I remember the theatrical version when I saw it in the early 1990s, and I liked the theatrical version better with the voiceover.
Yep.
All right, everybody. This is the the Connell Shadow and Son, Mark and Omanal show because that's who's all hanging out with us today. Today we're talking about Blade Runner and all the different variations of the movie. Some movies have endings we like. Some of the movies we had endings we don't like. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories about that movie out there. Was Harrison Ford's character really an android like everybody else, or was he human?
Hell yeah, of course he was.
So there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of things to talk about. With that being said, we'll start with the nonsense off with everybody saying hi. And what do you guys got going on? We're starting things a little bit backwards today. I'll start with you, Mark, because you're next to me. Because I think you just started a channel of your own.
Yeah, that's what I've got going on so far. Just gaming once in a while, not as much as I would like to be in that, but yeah, I just started a channel. I'm kind of put my little intro videos up. Hopefully have a couple more practice ones up maybe sometime this week or next week, and then hopefully do something with my daughter on there, and then yeah, that's the game, and then formally kick off in October is the game plan.
I look forward to seeing some of those videos. Hell, I look forward to being on some of those videos if you have me.
And what's the name of the show?
Mark's Genre Mixer.
I like the sound of the.
Already sub. Make sure you guys do the same.
All right,
Is it a separate channel?
Well, man with the owl with the flowing hair. It looks like he's like almost shampoo commercials.
Yeah, right. How's it going, guys?
Yes.
What
I know, right?
you and the Sun Guy going on this week?
Well, we just hit 400 subs this morning. Now we're trying to push for that 500. So when we hit 500 subs, we got a huge giveaway of miniatures, maybe even some books. But we're going to be giving away about $500 worth of, game-related merchandise to, give back to all those incredible people that got us here. We've got a painting video later tonight. If the little guy will actually pick up a brush, it's yeah, I lost some weight, huh? And we've got a video just about every day of the week, sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the day. We'll be starting a new type of show on Mondays, but that we'll talk about later once we get all the issues finalized. But you guys know where to find us. We got something going on just about every day. And if I'm not making a video with my son or by myself, then we'll be on somebody's show like today. If we're only in the chat, maybe we'll be on a video like Table Breakers or Gatekeepers or Max's show, Bruce's show, Connell's show. We're like luggage. You can't get rid of us.
All right. Well, Jack, since you're basically doing everything your dad tells you to do, we all know.
Yeah, right.
It's a funny joke.
I do try. All right. So, so is it more or less the rinse, lather, repeat of what your dad's got going on this week? This is what you got going on there, Mr. Lava Lord?
Not really, actually. I've been making steady progress. Well, when I say steady, I mean incredibly slow progress, but it is progress nonetheless on the thing which I've been talking about for way too long, and all that exists of it now are 2 private videos and a website. But, I mean, certainly by Christmas they'll be done. Probably by Halloween, I hope. I'm kind of shooting to get them done and out there by Halloween. That's what I'm hoping for. But, of course, there's a chance if I get them out, if I finish it now, it'll be on Halloween. But if I'm lazy and don't finish it in time, then, well, nobody will ever actually know.
Well, considering you're a teenager,
not Christmas. I'm not pushing it back.
Considering you're a teenager, we'll expect to see it by December of next year. Mr. Owl.
It shouldn't be that
All
difficult
right.
to assume.
Well, let's see. I have my son because he got kicked out for political reasons. I
guess that's better than drug reasons.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? If you're doing things to aggravate your mom, what do you expect to happen? You know, it was intentional. And, you know, anyway, there was that. It's not really political. It's just, you know, you just kept poking the bear, and the bear finally went off. So there's that. Got reading over the Pugmire stuff and the Monarchies of Mao, and we'll try to get a good time for Shadow and Son to go play with that along with
James L. Got to have James L. in that game.
He's welcome. You know, we'll forget how many.
James L. DM James. Why did I say James L?
Yeah.
I don't think James L. can make it. But if he could, that would be epic. He'd be a great addition, but I think the time difference is going to be really hard for him.
Yeah,
because
I'm not sure how to do it or when. You know, there's that, and then the question's Connell going to join in, so we'd all have to sit down and create characters at some point.
I've been invited. I'll jump in. I didn't know there was an invite waiting for me in the mailbox.
I just, you know, maybe it was my fault. I was just assuming.
Well, you know, wherever I go, Connell is, you know, right there. I don't know how that works out. I think he's got a bug in my house or something.
I think so.
And I know the little guy would love to be in a game of Pugmire, but I don't know how that would work out schedule schooling wise, because I think you said you wanted to do it early in the day on a weekday, which would mean that.
No, it'd be on a weekend. I'd rather do it earlier on a weekend.
Okay, that's even better.
Because I don't want to do it during a weekday. Not all of us are quite as fortunate as you. We still have to work for a living.
Right. I don't know why I thought you said a weekday.
You know, and then the question is, you know, like what time do you guys get up? Because I know you guys stay up pretty late. So
yeah, well, for a game like that, I'd get up early.
Okay. But yeah, we'll do it. We'll have to figure out when DM James is going, when my parents are coming to visit, and other things like that. So I'd like to, because I like to run it, and then I'm going, would that just be one session? I'm not sure it would. You're like, okay.
Gotcha.
I certainly hope not. I mean, even if it was only like 3 hours a session, I'd rather go that route, because I'm in a game right now that's literally like sometimes only 2 hours a week of AD&D with Bloodmire. Usually it's 3, but it's never 4 hours, and it's rough. You know, you start jonesing for the next episode halfway through the current episode.
Yeah. I mean, that's 2 hours is awfully short. I'm like, we barely can get anything going.
Yep.
All right.
Now that we covered what everybody's up to and future gaming plans, let's get into the I Need More Life topic of the day, Blade Runner. Now, I like Blade Runner because it is a very slow and drawn-out detective story. Those are kind of the ones I like. Endings vary on what copy of the movie you've seen versus the book. Granted, there is a sequel, and there's an animated series on it on Netflix, but we're not going to talk about sequel quite yet. And I'm pretty sure we probably won't get to anime. I want to get to the actual meat and potatoes of the show. So, other than Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford should be everybody's favorite character, is there any character out there that stuck out to you more than others? I'll start with you, Mark.
It would have to definitely be Roy in the movie. It'd definitely have to be Roy Batty. I mean, just he was the man. He was just awesome. But yeah, other than Harrison Ford, yeah, Roy Batty. It's in my opinion, it's Harrison Ford. It's not really his story. It's more the android replicant, whatever you would like to call him. It's his story and his group of refugees that he comes back to Earth with, their story more, in my opinion.
I get that. All right. What about you, Shadow?
Honestly, having rewatched it recently, and I just because I met Edward James Olmos is not influencing this. I realized that he let him go at the end. He had him dead to rights, and he let him go. And with, I don't know if you guys caught the scene where I think Harrison Ford was dreaming about a unicorn. Maybe that had something to do with the way we use unicorn now. That expression.
Right. That's where we go.
But he left an origami unicorn, showing that he was there at the apartment and let them go. He could have just kicked down the door, guns blazing, and took them both out. And he let them go. And throughout the movie, he was kind of a jerk, if you recall. The way he thumped Harrison Ford on the back of the shoulder with his cane, saying you're under arrest, and too bad she won't live, and things like that. Just being kind of a peckerhead. But in the end, he let him go. So to me, that was like kind of a shock this morning, realizing that he wasn't a bad guy. As a matter of fact, he was a pretty damn good guy. And if you buy into the fact that Harrison Ford was in fact a replicant, which occurred to me today watching it, I'm like, the way he withstood all of the scrapes and bruises in combat in the movie, and obviously before the movie, the way they talked about him being a one-man killing machine, etc. I'm like, so basically he's superhuman. Superhumans are the replicants. What better way to make a Blade Runner, a hunter of replicants, than to make one to do so? And then, if you notice the scene when the two, Harrison Ford and Rachel are sitting at the piano, and all of those old photographs there were like, to me, a dead giveaway that that's what they were saying. He's a replicant. Look at all these photographs that mean so much to him of people from, over 100 years ago, the black and white photos that were all over the place. He too had an obsession with his own fake memories.
Okay. What about you,
The
Lava?
only problem I see.
Okay, no, answer. What were you going to say? Let's go with what were you going to say first? The problem you had
with that theory is just that weren't they just starting to try to, because what was her name, Rachel? She was somewhat experimental.
Yep.
And they say in the ending of the version that we didn't watch, she didn't have an expiration of 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's a
really good point I didn't think about. But maybe that's why maybe that's why Edward James almost let him go, because he knew he had a 4-year life expectancy, or maybe he almost didn't know, and he too was a replicant and was getting, starting to have, actual emotions and stuff. I don't know. I didn't think about that.
Anyway, characters, I don't really know. I mean, of characters, obviously, other than that's a difficult question, because I didn't really think of it in that particular way. I thought, yeah, he's the best character in the thing, because obviously he is. Even though I didn't realize who.
He didn't realize that was Harrison Ford while watching the movie until after I told him.
Yes, there's something bothering me in this room.
Wow.
More Indiana Jones. How could you not let him watch Raiders of the Lost Ark? Sorry.
To be honest, we're not really a big movie family. Only recently have we really started trying to push that envelope. Before we met you guys, we had watched maybe 15, 20 movies together in his life.
Oh, wow. See,
Yeah.
movies to me are kind of sacred in the sense That was something I used to do with my grandpa, going to a theater every Sunday and seeing what was showing. I think that's why I'm more forgiving when it comes to movies than I am with other things.
Well, you guys all know my issue with Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately that has, kept me from, doing what I should have, but it's so hard to have that issue. And then, I have to pick and choose the movies that I'm willing to watch. And that means going through the list of people in the movies. Are they one of those people or not? And you'd be surprised how many times that answer is yes, they are, and therefore I'm not watching that movie, or the producer or the director or one of these people is one of those people, in which case I can't have anything to do with it. Stay sane.
Fair enough.
Because of why? What else would you do other than research every single aspect of every single person who worked on the movie? And if there's one thing you don't like, can't watch it.
All right.
I'm not looking up the gap. And the cameraman, I'm looking up the people at the top. And, it's usually a list of 5 or 6 people. And if they're on that list, then I'm not interested.
I'm kind of there with you, El. But to each their own. This is okay. So what about you, any particular character that stuck out more than others?
There are a lot of them. I mean, to be fair, whether you like it or not, of course, Roy Batty for the replicants that escaped. Harrison Ford. I really didn't care about Rachel. She was just kind of, if you ever want to watch the Soylent Green, reminds me of furniture. And then see, he knows the phrase for that. But
anyone else would reference that movie? Wow.
But I mean, when you start looking at it, Edward James Olmos, I liked the theatrical version where he would be talking in city speak, and Harrison Ford gave the narration explaining what city speak was. The problem that I have with, I don't know what it is about directors and Ridley Scott sometimes, but I know that the movie studio wanted them to do the narration, and that to me added a lot more depth without me having to research. And I kind of enjoyed that when I originally watched it, where he talks about him talking in city speak, which is a pidgin of different languages all mixed together. And to be fair, Edward James almost steals any scene he's ever been in. He's that good of an actor. It's like Ricardo Montalban. When they come around, your eyes just gravitate towards them. Doesn't matter what it is. But I'll mention a little name character in there, which is I like the doll maker. I don't remember his name.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Because you go over.
He was all right.
Well, I never really liked him, but when I watched the second time, well, I guess it's the third or fourth time now, but when I watched it recently, I looked over, and you can see that it's some poor guy that's going in there. He's lonely. He creates his own friends because he's outside of the norm. He's really intelligent, then he has this disease that's aging him rapidly. There's a pretty girl that comes in. He gets kind of smitten with her. And then you feel kind of bad for him in the fact that Roy kills him off, even though he was incredible. He was trying to be helpful. And I feel
Did he kill him off?
He did. Well, at least in the final version, they said. In the final cut, they said they found his dead body along with Tyrell.
Oh, that's sad.
And I feel kind of bad for him for that. But he created he just a good-natured person in a very bad world that unfortunately met a timely end. You never got a feeling from him that he was vindictive or all the others had these moral conflicts, and he did not. He lived a good life. That's the way it was for him.
I know the actor you're talking about. He was in another
Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. Wasn't he one of the Larrys or Daryl?
Yeah. He was in Deadwood as the hotel owner / mayor of Deadwood that was on HBO. He always kind of plays those weird, kind of off-putting characters. But no, I know what you're talking about. All right, I actually, I don't know why, but my favorite character I could go with what you guys said, and they're all great answers. But I like the guy who was running the Chinese restaurant.
Oh yeah.
I just want more scenes with him. Maybe I was hungry when I was watching the show. I don't know, but I just want more scenes with him. He's actually a really old famous actor. Most of his work is back in China, but yeah, I thought he was amazing for just the few lines that he got in that movie. I thought he knocked it out. Go for it.
The other one that I liked as well was the one that was making the eyes.
Oh yeah. Hannibal Chew.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Hannibal Chew is another one of those Asian actors that he's in more than you think. I think he was in the main bad guy in Big Trouble in Little Chinatown.
Yes.
So, all right. So, next question I have is if you're playing, I guess this would probably fit best in what was that game? RPG. Is it Shadowrun?
You have Shadowrun and Cyberpunk. Both are.
Either would work. Or Traveler.
Would you guys run a clone of this game in Shadowrun or in those RPG games, or would you just leave it as is and try to come up with your own story? I mean, I know Shadow would most likely say I would just build my own, but I thought there was enough aspects to this show that would make a halfway decent story for those of the younger generation that have not seen Blade Runner. So I'll start with you, Mark. What would you do?
If I was to run this, I would, maybe try to apply it to either Traveler or I've never really ran Cyberpunk, so I can't speak on that. And I know I can't remember if Free League's putting it out or Modifiate. One of the two are putting out a actual Blade Runner game, but I mean, I'd like to try it. I don't know if this would work as a campaign. I don't know. Maybe it could. You have to have the right players, because I could see everybody either fight and they say, "Oh, I want to only be everybody's going to want to be the Blade Runner, or everybody's going to want to be the butt-kicking replicant," and then it just, how far can the story? You're just rehashing the same thing again, and I don't know.
No, I get that. What about you, Shadow?
I agree a lot with what Mark just said. I've used and still use in my universe replicants of one sort or another. It's just like he said, it's a very limited story arc. No matter what you do, if you go out and shell out the $150+ whatever it is to buy Blade Runner, you better be like the fan club kind of audience for that movie, because you're not going to get very far unless you mix it with the other Ridley Scott movies, the Alien movies. You're really going to have a very, it's basically a bounty hunter campaign that tries desperately not to get boring without bringing other things into it. It's just, Dog the Bounty Hunter, the role-playing game. Right. Nobody's, unless you are a band of Roy Batty and fellow replicants of trying to not get, retired, that campaign is not going to last very long. It really, really isn't. And even if you throw in the Outer Worlds and that sort of thing, you get away from Earth, you're looking at a really hard sell after, game 8, let's say, with today's, generation of gamers. Some old school gamers, they'd probably just rather play a sci-fi game where they bump into replicants or Blade Runners every so often. Maybe one of them's in the party, but they got other things they want to do. A retired Blade Runner like Deckard would make for a great Traveler character and go do other stuff, but just constantly hunting down replicants or being hunted, I just don't see it as as going over very, very well or very long.
Now we lose Jack. He'll be back though. All right, Omen, what about you?
I'm going to go a little bit different, which is I agree with Shadow that it's very limited. However, the atmospherics and themes that run throughout it are fantastic for a setting. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that alone. I would do other aspects in there. But let's be honest, as anyone that's played Shadowrun, you can tell they took a lot of that art that was used in Blade Runner, and they mimicked it. I'm not going to say it's exactly copied, but they mimicked a lot of it. And
it has to rain every day of the year.
Yeah, well, it's Seattle. I mean, no. What's funny is every time I've been to Seattle, it's been completely sunny, and I'm like, why does everyone talk about it being so depressing? No, I think that's part of it. Is the atmospherics, and to be fair, is they did integrate a lot of it into, and I read Cyberpunk 30 years ago, but Shadowrun I've kept up on. The atmospherics are in there. The idea of of the paranoia that are there replicants out there? What are they doing? When you start getting into a little bit later, and I know that we're not talking about as much, when you look at 2049 and you look at, I don't think that it follows the same atmospherics, so I didn't like it as much. I do think that the Black Lotus does very well for bringing some of that in as well. But really having the characters play as a Blade Runner, I think would be, since they tend to work alone, wouldn't work as much as a game. And I know that Free League did it. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I think they'd prove me wrong with Alien, the RPG. But it's going to take some innovativeness. And I think that, you've got a lot of it in there, but as far as atmosphere, I don't think you can do better for a near sci-fi game than Blade Runner. It's like, you know what, guys, we're going to be playing in this. I want you to watch RoboCop and Blade Runner, and that will give you a feel between the two as far as a near sci-fi setting, in about 20 or 30 years. I think I would go for that, and then I would throw in my own stuff from there. But I do like some of the ideas of, what's interesting is, while they call them androids and stuff like that, they're really, they're organic, 100%.
Well, there's
organic.
two different. That's just it. And there's two different companies.
Yeah.
Tyrell makes the replicants, and Weyland Yutani or whatever from Alien makes the androids, and both companies existed and are mentioned actually in Blade Runner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So there's two different things going on. The two different, corporate heads had different ideas of which way they wanted to go. One went with biological, one went with mechanical.
Right. Well, I understand, but I'm saying just from the feeling between it, for near sci-fi, we're talking within the next 20 or 30 years. You're not going to get any better for Blade Runner. I think that's great if you want a gritty. How do I want to say it? If you want a gritty world that is not clean cut, it's that's what I think that Blade Runner does so well. You come in, you get to see the poor, you get to see the downtrodden going through. It's a busy, hectic life. It is not anything else. I think that's very good, and for that atmosphere, along with RoboCop, I think it sets a very good precedent for it. Especially when you see one of these mega buildings like they have back there. In the meantime, you see the flares. The visuals on Blade Runner, and I know it's far back, are still fantastic when you watch them venting the fire up.
You guys missed it. You guys missed it since you brought that up. My son, he's not here. We were talking about it, and he's like, why is all that fire going on? From the smokestacks or whatever. And he then it the screen says 2019. He's going, oh, if it was just 2020, it would have been fine to make perfect sense.
But I mean, I actually, when I drive around here, sometimes I'll see them flaring off natural gas from the oil wells. So I think it's a very cool visual. I think it sets the mood if you're going to do something dark in the night. I think it would even work for games like World of Darkness, like Vampire and stuff like that. Any gritty, urban, near futuristic city, I think it works very well for.
All right. Well, I'm like, watching the movie, and I'm thinking, how would I turn this into a game, or would I turn this into a game and just leave? Oh, should I just leave status quo alone? I don't really. I tried to play Shadowrun once and did not have a positive experience, to say the least. And I've never played Cyberpunk. The new. I know it's a video game. I know there's a video game version of it that had Keanu Reeves on it, or supposedly a voice actor in it. But other than that, it's not really my bag. But I'm starting thinking, what if you made the party all androids, or whatever the hell they're called? Replicants. And having somebody chase them down, like a slasher movie. They don't know why they're being hunted down. They just know somebody's coming to take them out. Make it where Harrison Ford's character is the bad guy.
Go look at Black. I still recommend anyone watching Black Lotus because it's a much faster. It's better for action and other stuff. But that's kind of the very premise of that.
Oh, is it? Then I'll definitely have to watch.
I actually ran a game. Did anybody here read X-Men or X Factor back in the around the Death of the Phoenix era?
Yeah.
Okay. And X Factor, there was a lot of anti-mutant sentiment. I ran a superhero game, but in space, for probably about 10 years, where the heroes were actually being chased down. So, playing like a replicant party, it can work. And I recommend, if you're going to do it, you definitely beef them up and make them, the Leon type strength, the combat, abilities or whatever. But all you got to do is just throw in that cliche of they lost their memories, and you've got the makings of a pretty good campaign that could last at least a year or more, depending on the players.
I mean, I could say that they're from a heavy gravity world. Therefore, when they're on Earth or wherever, they tend to be a little bit stronger than the average person, a little bit more durable than the average person, because they were raised on a heavier Earth world. I mean, there's a lot of weird little sci-fi. I don't want to say tricks you could throw into it, but it really is. So you disappeared on us, L. Jack.
Yes.
So would you? I mean, I've yet to. You haven't really ran anything as of yet, from my understanding.
No, but I've done equivalent things. Whenever people ask me the question, I just answer not as what I do in
All right. So
running something, but just writing in general.
Then I want to ask you the question: if you were going to run a Blade Runner campaign, and yes, after reading chat, I realized there is a Blade Runner RPG. I did not know that, but it really doesn't surprise me. There's an RPG for damn near anything. I'm surprised there's not one for the Bible. But that's just me being an ass.
There is. I'm pretty sure there is.
Excuse me, what?
We'll get into that later. Let's not sidetrack. If you're going to run an RPG for Blade Runner, would you keep it? Would you just basically tell the story over for kids your age who might have not seen the movie, or would you change it up a bit?
Well, I don't think that many people who I know have seen it, though it is certainly possible that some of them have. But I don't know, because I'd find some way to do it. I don't like the idea of just doing what the movie did and then just doing it again. I'd probably do what some of you guys said, like just people who live in the world doing other stuff. I mean, I'd be much more interested in the alien side of this, but if I specifically Blade Runner, replicants, all that sort of thing, I feel like just having it be like Blade Runners, they're just hunting the replicants. not only could that be done with any setting, but it just kind of it doesn't bring that much new to the table. I mean, there's certainly some new things that could come with it, but not as much as you could if you went the other way around. Because I feel like it'd be better to have a party of replicants doing something. I feel like that would just be more interesting.
Okay.
Get much more
Yeah,
out.
maybe even leading up to why they would revolt. That could be very interesting.
Yes, certain.
Now, here's going to be the fun question. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of how should I put this? If you could boil it down to one overall thing you did not like about this movie, other than, you don't get the American ending where they walk off in the sunset holding hands, saying they're going to have 3 children, a picket fence, and a house somewhere other than California. Was there anything outrightly you just did not like about this movie? I'll start with you, Mark.
About this movie that I didn't like, I think this is, in my opinion, I mean, it's not an action-packed movie and it's a real slow burn, but I think this has got to be up in the top 10 sci-fi movies of all time. I don't know. I mean, it's got to rank up there with 2001: Space Odyssey. And as far as being a sci-fi movie, it's not an action movie. Don't get me wrong, but a sci-fi movie, in my opinion, it's got to be one. It's got to rank as one of the best. I can't see much wrong with this, but this movie, I'm going to go off on a tangent here a little bit. I reread the book, and this movie is almost its own story. There's maybe about 20% of what went on in the book in this movie, and I mean, this movie is about 80% different than what the book was.
Yep.
But as far as this movie, I mean, as a sci-fi movie, a true sci-fi movie, it's got to be up there. 2001: Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes. It's got to rank up there with some of the best.
Okay. So what about you, Shadow?
Well, right off the bat, with the the quote unquote happy ending, it seems like every version that doesn't show that is trying to make that seem like that's not even a consideration. Hell, the version we saw today, it ends right as they walk out the door, and Harrison Ford picks up the aluminum unicorn and squeezes it. The end. Did they just lose that footage? All the footage that came after that, on accident, and they're going, "Oh, okay, cool. Figure it out for yourself." It's not even like they're doing the lamest attempt at The Lady or the Tiger ever conceived. It's like everybody knows it's going to be somewhat of a happy ending. Maybe they get a flat tire with their car or something like that, or they get to Canada and it sucks there. But,
Wait, they went to Canada?
Yeah, they said up north. Up north from Los Angeles is got to be Canada.
Up north from Los Angeles is the rest of California.
I don't think leaving just California would be enough to get away from the law enforcement agencies of the planet, unless you had something going on in another country besides the United States. But the only thing I didn't like about this movie is their lame attempts really at trying to, create a crappy ending. It's like they went out of their way to make the ending not make sense. Why everybody went to all this trouble. Why Edward James Olmos's character let them go? What? So he can ambush them later? It really is that how people think? No, he let him go because he wanted the happy ending. He knew, or he was too afraid to go up against Harrison Ford when he could have just waited till midnight, bust in, and just shot anything that moved. No, he let him go so they could have their happy ending. It's like everybody, all the actors in the movie wanted the happy ending, but the director went, "I'm having a shitty day. Screw you guys." The movie was great. I can't really think of anything bad until you get to the last literally 60 seconds, and whatever was going through Ridley Scott's head, thinking, screw these people. Otherwise, it was, like Mark said, it's easily, one of the top 10 sci-fi movies of all time, unless you demand an action movie and science fiction be synonymous. Otherwise, I really, I can't think of a damn thing.
All right. Jack, I'm sure you didn't like the fact that there was no dogs in this.
Yeah, I can't say my favorite character was the dog. I can't do that in this movie because there was none. That's the worst part, honestly. That's the worst part. Even worse than the dumb hand thing in Labyrinth, where they stole my idea a couple decades before I came.
You were born.
True. I mean, there wasn't really any specific problem I had with it, other than maybe just I don't know. I don't have one thing I can point to and say this was bad. This was a bad thing. It's just a general. Yeah, it was pretty good.
All right. Well,
There's no one thing I can point to and say this was amazing, but then another thing I can say this was crap. I can't do that. It's good. It's not. It wasn't amazing, at least to me, but it was really good.
Will you watch it again?
Maybe one day.
your dad was hoping for tomorrow. I can hear it in his voice.
No, not at all. I wouldn't mind seeing the sequel, just so I can say I saw the sequel at this point, though. But, like we were talking over on Bruce's channel, I just don't watch a lot of TV or movies, unless it's something, really, really spectacular and usually really, really old.
I gotcha. All right, moving down, Mr. Al.
A few things, because anyone that's watched Humphrey Bogart when he does his investigations, I would have liked there to have been a little bit more for the investigative side. I understand why they did it, but I would have actually cared to see less of the replicants and more of him trying to do actual detective work going through it. But
Fair enough.
To be fair, this is the thing, is if you remove that, it doesn't have the same impact as the sci-fi movie. But that you're always gonna have to play with it, and it's a very slow movie anyway, and it's hard to watch. I mean, I think it's really cool to watch the first time, but it's not one of those like someone mentions like, oh yeah, pop that in, let's watch it again. I mean, I would much rather watch an action film for that, or The Big Sleep from Humphrey Bogart, which I think is better for that, or some of these others. The other thing I would look at, and this is the one thing that did bug me while I was watching it, when he was going after the replicant with the snake, and he's trying to talk to her, and she's working in nude dancing with the snake, and he's using the most flimsy, stupid excuse of why he's there, as well, I'm trying to make sure no one's spying on you. I mean, it was so transparent, like, you can do better dialogue there. I mean, that just
Sure, that was kind of dumb.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that probably bugs me the most for all of that, is looking at it and going, wait a minute, this is so transparent.
Yeah, like she cares if anybody sees her, without her top on, which she blatantly displays, in the movie.
Yes, I think that would have been better if he had done something else. And
But you have to admit, Harrison Ford's voice change for that scene was about the funniest part of the movie.
I'm not disagreeing. You need a little levity, but I meant it was just so implausible, and it came off as just so forced that of course she's going to recognize it. And I didn't like that. That bugged me. That's the part that bugged me, is you knew what you were doing. It would have been better if you'd gone in kind of expecting. The other part is, if you're going after a replicant, and whether we talk about it or not, Harrison Ford is about the general level as a human being in strength and other stuff. He gets whipped around all the time by almost all of the replicants. He gets his ass kicked 3 times by 3 different replicants. And, well, and almost a fourth, to be fair, is
All four.
Oh yeah, he gets kicked by all of them. I mean,
Yep. That's why I think he was one, because any other guy would have been in bed for a week after two.
Well, no, except for the one at the beginning. He never really encountered that one at all.
No,
Leon?
but,
Yeah, Leon.
Yeah,
did.
Leon beat the shit out of him.
yeah, Leon.
Well, I mean, he roughed him up.
Oh,
I
wait,
mean,
no.
any guy who can live.
You're right. He did encounter him, but wait, no, yeah, he got shot. How did I forget about that?
Yeah, Rachel shot him, but
Rachel
I mean,
shot
any
him.
guy who can punch a hole through steel, hit you a couple of times, you might want to go get some X-rays.
I don't know how I
You're
forgot
not
about that.
breathing
I
right.
thought he just kind of disappeared. Like,
But-
you looked at him and then just never showed up again for some reason. I never
No.
I forgot about that.
But the whole point of that is that, almost all of them are physically superior to Deckard, and you think that for someone that has been a Blade Runner, he would have been much smarter for that aspect when coming in to confront, and that's what bugged me about that. So it was really the first one, right there. That's what got me.
Yeah, but maybe
What-
isn't that the catch? Because if you go with the angle that he was a replicant, he really wasn't. He really wasn't a Blade Runner with all the experience that he's professed to have said to have had. And the book kind of goes into it that he's not the best. The guy that got shot in the best was kind of like a second choice, but the guy in the beginning, Holden, he got iced by he got shot by Leon in the beginning. So Deckard wasn't necessarily the best, but you don't even it raises questions if he was a replicant or not. So if he was a replicant, he doesn't really necessarily have all the experience. You think he had the experience that they put in his mind or implanted in him that he thought he had, but maybe he really doesn't. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
just an idea.
He's smart when he starts looking over in the background and stuff, and he finds the scale. I mean, there's good investigative work, but even a good investigator knows, all right, these are replicants. They're strong. They've been trained to kill. Maybe I should go in either with backup, or I should go in or with a better reason of being there than anything else. Even if he says, hey, I'm looking for this girl, whatever, and leaves a card and says, okay, she's a replicant or something. That's what I would do is, hey, I've been looking for this stripper or whoever. She hasn't shown up in a few weeks. If you know anything, please let me know. Thank you very much. While he checks everything out and then he leaves. I mean, there's
but
no
I
ways
think
to do it.
everything both you and Mark just said actually leads more to him actually being a replicant. The fact that he like his eyesight, knowing that there's something to see in those photographs when he was using that old timey, zoom technology on the photographs, to him being able to withstand the kind of combat that he went through with replicants. A normal person would have probably, think about it. One was a strength model, who could easily lift 400 pounds and punch through, steel or metal or whatever it was that he was punching through with no problem. The first female was a combat model, and then Roy Batty, and he wasn't coughing up blood or any of that crap at the end of the movie. By the end of the movie, he was just a couple of shots of whiskey, and he's more or less kind of ready to go the next day.
Yeah, you know what though? I'm not disagreeing with that, and everyone wants to use it, but I also go, it's Hollywood, so
Yeah, there's that.
There's that aspect too. So I don't quite feel it as much. I understand where people are coming from, and we'll discuss this later. But I'm saying, but the weakness to me is when he goes over to confront the first replicant, and he doesn't have a good excuse, and it's of course. It could have been a better job. It could have been better writing for all of that. And I would have preferred that. That's just where I'm coming from.
There's a lot of right. They did a lot of right in this movie. And I think the only true sin in this entire movie was the inconsistency of the ending, the last few minutes of the film. I'm not a director. I took some classes in film history because I thought it would be an easy A, and I was right. But other than that, it's never really been my bag. I just think they should have stuck with an ending. I think whatever ending they decided to go with, they should have just, sorry if you don't like it, but this is the ending we're going with, and run with it. Not this, well, if maybe possibly stuff.
Yeah,
Well, I think that was all from a money-making aspect. Everybody knows that there is that ending, with them driving away in the car. But
The only way you get the second movie is with that
I
ending.
can't think of too many movies that have as many additions or versions as this one. If you think about it, they all, most movies, they're one and done. They might bring out a 10th or 20th anniversary,
Well,
which they did.
the new
But this movie has a lot of different versions: theatrical, director's cut, ultimate
Right.
edition, blah blah blah.
Can I want to bring up one thing, which is just like Ridley Scott redoing Alien. I think part of it is that he says, I want to give you a slightly different film. And, because I know when he talked about Alien, it's like, well, the director's cut's what you saw in the theatrical version for Alien. I think he did something similar here, where it's like, you know what? I'll give a little bit more here. I'll give a little bit more there. And that's just the way he is. It's like, look, I'll make different versions for it, and I'm not going to tell you which one's correct.
Well,
I
fine.
think
If he came up with that would be fine, and I don't really have a problem with it. But the movie, what was the movie? Clue, with Tim Curry and that crew, right?
yes.
If you watched it, even when it first came out, the different theaters got different fucking endings.
Yes.
well, it's a movie about Clue, so I don't really know what. I mean, that
The
seems like
reason Ryan bringing it up,
You'd actually like it a lot.
there's
It's a
not
great movie.
there's not just one ending. There's multiple theories. But with this movie, there should only be one ending, especially if they were thinking about doing a sequel down the road. There's only one ending that really works.
Well, well, look, we got the theatrical version, which was the studio coming in and telling him to do things that Ridley Scott did not want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And to be fair, Ridley Scott came back. What is it? Almost 20 plus years later to give a different version where he took out the narration, the voiceover, and I still like the theatrical voiceover better. Now, he did this, and he says, "Well, that's not going to be good enough. I'll do this one over here." But Ridley Scott likes to do different things, and some of it is that, well, I'm going to create the film I wanted to originally, and the studio interfered. Well, okay, I understand that. I do, but sometimes I think the studio was correct. I don't want to have to go read a wiki to find out all the little details. I don't want to have to go read the whole book to find out all the little details for whatever's going on. I want it to be self-contained, and I think the theatrical version, the original theatrical version, did a better job of that. Now, that said is, by my understanding, Harrison Ford wanted Deckard to be human, and so did the screenwriter, but they leave a little ambiguous. And Ridley Scott says, I don't know. I want to make sure that we know that it's that we know he's a replicant. And when you look at it, you get kind of an unsatisfactory in between.
Well, it's Harrison Ford. I'm surprised he didn't want his character to die.
Harrison Ford. How many movies has Harrison Ford died in? Like one?
He wanted Indiana Jones to die. He wanted Han Solo to die.
it's not that he does die; it's that he wants to die. That's the thing.
But if you look at it, he still comes back for more films. If he really didn't want to, he would do. Nope, I'm never playing this character again.
Right. I mean, I love Harrison Ford. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he was joking when he said this. He's like, there will never be any other person playing Indiana Jones. When I die, the character dies with me. And I'm like, oh wow, really? That's the way you're treating that? Okay.
Well, there's some things that are just iconic about it. I mean, there's certain things in there, and to be fair, you can do an Indiana Jones type, but I don't like it when they just try rebooting everything. Sometimes it's good, a lot of times it isn't, and but you have to forget everything.
Right.
When you get an iconic character, which I have heard people talk about, but I hate saying this. When I watch Ben-Hur, and it is not Charlton Heston.
Oh, the new version of it, yeah.
Well, the other thing was it was a much longer movie too. They added more to it, and I mean the original it wasn't even the original. It was a remake of one from the 1920s for Ben-Hur. But Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, he nails it so well. It's like, why are you trying to improve on perfection? The problem I think is, and I'll have to agree with Jack Posobiec about this, George R.R. Martin doesn't know how to finish it. And he's too rich. Looking at what's down there, he's too rich, or too deeply involved and too successful for a publisher and an editor to actually come in and say, George, this is how you're going to finish it. And I don't mean the ending, but I mean for his writing. And the truth of it is, George R.R. Martin doesn't have the heart for it anymore. He kind of, after he got burned out, he wrote more books that were not Song of Fire and Ice than he did in that 10 years. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's like I was reading an article today about him, actually. It's kind of funny that he got brought up. Originally, he didn't even want the actual dragons to be in the books.
Yeah.
Because he's like, it doesn't make, I don't want this. I want my world to be somewhat realistic. I'm like, but you have walking frozen zombies. I mean, that's our, but whatever, But no, I mean, I get what you're saying. The other only side argument I have with this is, unfortunately, a lot of these studios only have copyrights to these movies for these characters for so long. And if they don't pump out another horrible Spider-Man movie or another horrible Fantastic Four movie, the rights go back to the original people.
And to be fair, the last Sony Spider-Man was pretty good.
I like Tom Holland. I'm just,
Yeah. I just meant the fact they brought all three Spider-Men back and did it so well. I thought that was a fantastic way of doing the film. Anyway, sorry, we digress.
I mean, I'm not trying to stick up for the studios, but if they don't do something with these rights, these characters, IPs, there we go.
Sure.
They lose them, and God, could you imagine? It's like Amazon, and I'll get back to topic really quick. Although this is my show, so screw you all.
Exactly.
Amazon was about ready to do a Conan show, and they decided not to for whatever reason. I'm actually glad that they're not, because I don't need another bullshit Conan TV series or another because we already had one.
Now, to be fair on this, if they follow the books, I don't know why they don't do it. They could do very well, because the books I thought were much better than the other stuff that they were doing in there.
Because you can't find someone who loves the IP enough to keep their own opinions out of it.
Or the studio won't let them, fuck. I mean, with Game of Thrones, going back to Game of Thrones really quick, George R.R. Martin was right there most of the time in the filming, and he just winked, nodded his head, and collected checks.
Well, Martin also wrote some of the screenplays for some of the episodes. They did consult him. Now, I'm not saying the later stuff. I think he just kind of gave up on that. But he did do some of the earlier stuff for that. But the other thing is, Martin also had the advantage, unlike a lot of writers, that he had written for TV before.
That is true.
I mean, he did write for what was it, Beauty and the Beast in the 1980s. But he was used to, he understood that there's a difference in medium between the two. But the other point is for Martin was, he made sure he went to HBO. He did not sell it off to NBC or someone else that would have completely watered down his story to make sure that it would pass the FAA censors.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
And he said that. He said only HBO could do it. And to be fair, they did a good job at the beginning. They gave him enough time. They didn't make it just a 2-hour movie, which you can't do. And they allowed it to really develop. And I think that made a big difference. It's the same way that, Kubrick's also faulty for this, and so is Francis Ford Coppola. Sometimes you need that constraint to make a better movie. Now, not all the time, but by having those constraints, it forces you to keep up a certain level of pacing. It forces you to make sure that shots are, that's a well-constructed movie. And I think that's part of it. But I've also heard another thing, though, which is, I didn't realize this. I was listening to Mark Robert. He was talking about the movies in the 1930s were about 20% more than one of the movies currently because they would talk faster. And I'll be honest, speaking of Ridley Scott, Gladiator was too long and too boring, and he could have cut out about half an hour and made it a much better film by using voice narration. I hate saying that, but all these other people, all my friends went, yeah, it was about a movie 30 minutes too long. You can cut stuff out. You can learn how to speed things up. And I think that's sometimes the strength of that. And I'm not saying always, but it depends on how much.
Right. He has a normal recipe. If you see enough of his movies, you can find it. Gladiator. What was it? Robin Hood with Russell Crowe.
Yeah, but that was a Ridley Scott film also.
Yeah, Aliens. There's normally a recipe goes with, and a lot of actors actually do. Directors follow it. But back, it's just Blade Runner. I kind of thought, and you guys, I'll be asking you guys this question: would Blade Runner been a better TV show than a movie?
After seeing Black Lotus, absolutely.
All right, Mark, I'll start with you. What do you think? If you're going to pace Blade Runner out into a TV series, you think it would have done better than the movie format that we got?
It depends. If you're gonna follow the book and go with the book, then yeah, you would need to need to do a series or a limited series. I mean, I don't know, maybe like a 12, 13 series, episode arc, and then finish the story. I mean, the book's only a couple hundred pages long. Actually, there's a lot packed into it in a short amount of time. But if you wanted to go that route,
isn't there a Raul Julia version of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep as a movie?
If there is, I'm not aware that there is. It's news to me. I'll have to look that up. I never even knew that was a thing.
I could be thinking of a different actor, but I'm pretty sure I remember that. Which I just remembered it now. If someone's got access to a computer, because I don't, look that up. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go that route, but it's going to be a hard sell. Like I said, it's the book's a real slow burn, and it gives you more questions than answers. So you're not I don't know if you're gonna find a lot of people that are gonna like that type of media to consume for like watching as opposed to reading. I think it works better as a read than a book. But the way they did this movie, like I said, this movie maybe 20% of what was in the book, and changed a lot of things. I mean, there's only about 20% of this movie represents what the book is.
Gotcha.
I'm going to bring this up. So much of it depends. I think if they had done a lot more detective work, and they had done good detective work, it would have worked really well as a miniseries. Because you can draw it out. The problem is if you don't, there's not that much there if you aren't going to do a lot more investigative work. I think that it would have either been just I think that's what you have to look at, is that you have to do the investigative work. You would have had to focus more on the replicants and how they came to Earth, and then you'd have had to focus on some other aspects in there. But it's not that you couldn't flesh it out, but seeing some of the crap I've seen them push out,
especially here lately.
That is. Yep.
I mean, look at 10 episodes. There's 10 episodes for a lot of stuff, and they used to write 21. And I'm just going to mention whether we like them or not. But some of the Star Treks, those used to be, 22 episodes a year, and that's what they used to have with Babylon 5. And look at the writing quality for that. And now look at nowadays, and they can barely do 10 episodes that don't feel like filler. I'm like, what the hell is going on? You guys used to be able to do full seasons, and there was more packed in each one of those episodes than what you're doing in 10 episodes, and they're falling flat because I think these writers don't know on how to do a lot of the foreshadowing and other aspects in there. The writing the writers in Hollywood their quality has gone way, way down over the last 20 years.
Yeah, but most of them are incompetent.
I don't want to say incompetent. I want to say they're shackled to the culture that they're trying to write for.
They're a part of the culture.
I'm just this much. They don't have any skill. Your skilled writers are gone. Or a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of your skilled writers are gone. They haven't done the studying. They haven't done the reading or the novels. I mean, that's the problem I've noticed is a lot more of Hollywood is going to special effects, and you can notice this in comedy. Anyone that's watched, I'll just use an example, as Airplane. There are so many gags in there that you can watch it. I mean, you can watch it over and over and over, and including with Blade Runner. You can watch it over and over and feel like you're getting a bunch of different layers every time you watch it. And you now look at the stuff, and they want to telegraph everything. Let's telegraph it, and instead of, and I even noticed this with Conan, you can pick up on little details every time you go in, and the assumption was the viewer will not get it on their first or second showing, but we're not going to explain it to them. We're going to wait, and if they watch it several times, it might finally dawn on them like, oh, that's what that came from. Just little things that you catch. And I think that's the problem that we're having nowadays is they believe that they have to telegraph and tell you everything up front, so there is no multiple watching or going back and saying, oh, I missed this. Let me go back and rewatch it or reread it. I mean, as much as we're talking about Blade Runner here, I was still picking up on little things that were coming into it, like, oh, okay, I'm not blaming it just on the final cut. I mean, I think that it was very similar, but you can go like for different layers and say, oh, well, this is why this person did this, or oh, I missed that the first time I watched it because I was too engrossed watching the pretty pictures, or Rachel's face, with I was going, oh yeah, that's real pretty, instead of looking at the background as much. But they used to put different layers all over the place, and so when you got tired of that one, you look in the back, you go, wow. And I think that's what we're missing in the modern writing aspect, is that they're afraid of the audience missing something. I'm like, no, the audience should miss everything, and only the true fans will really dig deep into it, and it makes everything worth watching multiple times. Anyway, that's my low end.
I get what you're saying, and I'm not saying I disagree with it so much. I disagree with it really at all. But let's take Mel Brooks and Blazing Saddles. I'm not saying Mel Brooks and Blazing Saddles. I'm not saying Mel Brooks was the the Da Vinci of writing, the Shakespeare of his time.
Yeah, he might be.
He might be. Yeah, I'm not saying it, but he might be. Anything he writes right now would have to, and he is an incredible writer, but anything he writes right now would go through a blender of, is this acceptable by the studios? Is this acceptable by the SAG? Is this acceptable by the culture that we live in? And the answer is going to be no.
But I'm going to bring up something else. Because you break that, it makes it worth watching. I mean, anyone that's a little side note here, if we're really going to talk about this, since we're going off in tangents like we normally do, go watch In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier.
Oh God, that's a great movie.
It's a fantastic movie, and yet they touch on so many different issues that none of those would be acceptable. And the same, and I heard the same thing when they were talking about, I guess when Rogan was interviewing, what's his name? Who was the who did Pulp Fiction? I
can never pronounce his name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Well, but that director, he said when he did, what was it? What did he do? Reservoir Dogs. Anyway, he was going over. He said, "Well, I was told I couldn't make that movie then either." And the reality of it is that if you can get the funding, you can make the movie. And for Mel Brooks, comedy is supposed to be offensive, and the fact that we're trying to make comedies that are quote safe is what makes them not funny.
Yeah, exactly.
The shock value is part of what does it. And I'll be honest, with all of the cursing, and I don't like hearing it either. All about the sheriff and everything else. It took me years to sit through Blazing Saddles, but let's be honest. He still made the producers. Springtime for Hitler. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you know, which is hilarious because it's ridiculous. And I've seen, and I still like the Will Ferrell version. You know, I was like, okay, you know, they did remake that. I'm okay with it, but you gotta. The problem I think is that they're trying to be too safe, and by being safe, I don't want to go see the movies. They're just not worth it. There's better stuff on. You know, HBO's willing to push some things, but you know, but you're right. The political correctness for all this is not making better shows. In fact, it's preventing them from being all that they can be because you're afraid of offending someone. You know, go ahead and offend someone, but make sure that it's good writing. You know, interesting characters, in depth. I want to know more about this person. You know, whether Blade Runner or anything else. I would have liked to have known more about Decker. I would have. I want to know more about James Olmos. I want to know more about a few of these different worlds, and that means that it's a place worth going to again and again. But some of these places, you know, I enjoyed Soldier, but I really don't care. I mean, I hate saying it, but I don't care, even though that could be considered a spin-off of this as well. I mean,
It wasn't a great movie, nor was it a bad movie.
No, it was enjoyable.
It was a movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I took Soldier. It was a movie. No, it's not. I don't know. I kind of wonder what writers. It's like, what was it? Early mid 2000s when we had that writer strike.
Yes, yeah. Well, 2008, 2009, somewhere. It was when Heroes was out. It was doing really well, and after the writer strike, it just collapsed.
And I thought it was going to kill. Was that show House MD? And I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't. And I don't know where, if we, you know, I'm not saying the writers, maybe we'll get better with the next generation of writers. I mean, I think whoever came up with was that TV show, Leave It to Beaver. Whatever writer came up with that needs to be taken out and beaten severely. But that was just a show of its era.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I'm okay with some of things being dated. Though I'll be honest, is the original Lucille Ball stuff with Desi Arnaz?
Yeah,
a lot of that's still funny. Watching it, what is it? 70 years later. You know, there's some of that. There's some the old Laurel and Hardy, and the Marx Brothers. Oh my God, watch the Marx Brothers. There's a lot of stuff in there that I'm surprised they got away with back then.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, he's listening to like, is that allowed? But the double entendres, where you weren't sure if he said something dirty or not, but it could be construed that way. You know, and yet somehow it made it past the censors. I thought what made it great. Well, even the old Disney films. Go look at some of the old Disney films and look at the different layers they have.
Oh, Aladdin. Anything with fucking Robin Williams in it.
Oh, so anyway, sorry about that. This one doesn't quite have the same thing, but I think that was, I think that we could have a Blade Runner series. I think, especially for the original with Deckard, I think that it would have required a lot. There could have been a little bit more action, but they could have also done a lot more as far as an investigative aspect, you know, and I would have enjoyed that.
Okay. Let's see. See, I'm colorblind, so there's a lot of these effects that were lost on me. It's like I heard there was. No, that's the new one that was kind of lost on me. I'm sorry. I'm thinking. Would you want to? The world that it's based in. What was it? Seattle? You said.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Do you see us heading that direction, or is that just a wishful thinking in the wrong direction?
Oh, we're halfway there. We're well over halfway there. If you've been to downtown LA or Hollywood in the last, year,
it's pretty bad. LA is.
LA
Well, here's the thing: all big cities, with a few exceptions, most of which being in Europe, are disgusting. Okay, that's the state of large cities. Not just now, but throughout the entire history of the world, big cities have been an awful place. I mean, you look back in late Victorian London, that place was awful. Modern New York and LA, those places are awful. I mean, it's just a trend in every single era of humanity that the large cities are filled with diseases and filth and crime. It's always been a thing, and it will probably always be a thing.
Okay. All right, I'll start with you, Mark. Do you think we're heading more to a Blade Runner era or I can't think of another show. I'm trying to think of something else. Do you think we're heading in that general direction?
I'm kind of I think we're maybe heading towards a dystopian future, but I think it's going to be given under the guise that you're living in a dystopian utopia, thinking everything's all sunshine and rainbows, but really underneath the surface, there's a lot of
Like
bad.
the rollerball?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I praise Rollerball so much. The scenario that Rollerball presents is probably the most accurate to where we'd realistically go. People don't realize they're in a dystopia if they're in one, because typically the society which they live in, they wouldn't imagine it to be bad, because how could it be bad?
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
unless
gonna-
things are collapsing all around them, people typically can't see when things are bad.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it a few different ways, because everyone talks about how bad or how great things are compared to other times, and I think things do go cyclically depending on where they are. I don't like big cities. I like being out in the country, but I have a friend of mine who absolutely loves cities, and it just depends on what you're looking for. If you want the dynamism, I think that we're looking at when you start. I don't think that we're headed towards that kind of. Well, you know what? That's not true. I think that we are headed towards these giant mega cities that you get to see that are built up. I mean, look what's happening in for the Dutch, where they're trying to push out the farmers, and they're trying to build this city of like 30 million people. And you're going, wait a minute, why do I want to do that? But I think that some of it is that people are assuming that everything's going to become like Japan when you start looking at it. And instead, at least in the United States, what we're finding is more urban sprawl. And I think that that's the interesting dynamic of it, is that people don't necessarily want the super tall buildings that you would see in some of these areas with billboards everywhere. I mean, some of them do it for New York, but even when I lived in Chicago, there's only a small area, probably 2 by 2 square miles, that actually have the giant skyscrapers. Anything after that, once you get outside of there, it goes down to like 3 and 4 story buildings. And I do think that while our overlords, is the best way I want to phrase it, want us to go in those super high rises,
Yeah, they do, with a passion.
our nature is that we like to see sunlight and sky. It's one thing to be on a 3rd or 4th story building, because you can step outside and look, and you can still easily see the sky. With the roads and things like that. I think a lot of them, I've been to Hungary. Hungary is with Budapest, and sometimes they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, where you get more people, there's always going to be more crime, because people can disappear. You can't, like I was dealing with a farmer yesterday, and I was telling my parents, I said, we can do a handshake, because if he breaks it or I break it, I can't do business with anyone within probably 10 miles, because they all know each other. You can't, in a big city, you can disappear. You can move away. You can do stuff. You can't do that in a agriculture. I think part of what we're looking at, though, is I think this is the way I'm feeling, is we're going towards a 1980s RoboCop thing, where they want high crime rates, they want drugs, they want all of this, so they can push people out, and then they can redevelop it for how they want to. And I know for a fact this does occur.
Yep.
You know, it's to depress land values so they can come in and swoop it all in and then push everyone out in a big thing. And you know, that anyone that doesn't believe me, go look at what happened in Arlington with the Cowboy Stadium, which was one of the worst areas that they could, and now that's a really high class area.
Yeah, just look into BlackRock and see what they've been up to lately, and you'll see the game plan. That is the game plan for the future, is to push all of us into a high-rise, you know, basically self-imposed prisons where you get paid for your vote. We're nothing but, you know, proles in our cell with our drugs and our big screens, and that's all we ever care about. What better way to control, you know, billions of people? That's the goal.
I think the other aspect on this is is when we're talking about transhumanism, which is a big thing that they're pushing,
which is absolutely evil.
Which is, you're trying to remake human bodies. We'll just clone you. You know, that's something, while I don't mention it, that's kind of what the idea is. We will program slaves to do this, and it is true. They want to brainwash you, and when you start thinking for yourself, they want to erase you. I mean, that's you know, if you really want to see, is go look at someone that somehow violates their pre-planned agenda based on the way that they look. You can't vote that way because you look like X. You can't do this because of this reason. And you know, well, you know, that they treat you as commodities rather than human beings. And so it's the dehumanization aspect for this. And this is the part that, you know, when we talk later sometime about like Blade Runner 2049, that's some of the aspect of when they look at it is, oh, we lost everything because they destroyed it. And I know we're trying to stay in this one in particular. You know, the fact there was even a sequel made to Blade Runner, considering Blade Runner lost money when it was produced. It lost money when they made the sequel. And yet we still talk about it because there are things that resonate for us throughout. And I think that's part of it, is what makes us human. When we look at Roy Beatty, you know, he crushes Tyrell's skull, then he goes over and kills off the doll maker. You know, that there is no humanity, and it's only at the end when he's grabbing Deckard and realizes that there's mortality, and brings him up and sits him down, and realizes that life is worth living. I mean, why did he, you know, the weird thing is, and I know there's some symbolism, but why the hell is he carrying a dove? You know, a dove is a symbol of peace. And yet here's this psychopathic murderer, which is what he is, that comes to realization that maybe life is worth living. And, you know, that was his one redeeming act before he died.
Yeah.
And that was actually a Rutger Hauer idea, from what I just got to reading, trying to find the records of the Raul Julia movie. I'm going to have to do a deeper dive, but I'd be willing to bet money that there was such a movie, but I just can't find it.
Now,
not to interrupt real quick. I've got to bounce out, guys. I'm gonna cut out. I gotta work. But
take care, Mark.
Thank you for joining us.
Seeing you again, and hey, shout out your channel again before you go. We will all make sure you get, you know, a crap ton of subs as soon as we can.
Okay, it's called Mark's Genre Mixer, and I'm gonna pick a topic each month and review a few books and a movie, maybe some comics, and then do some odd pop culture stuff maybe from time to time with my daughter on the channel.
That sounds amazing. I can't wait to
Looking forward to it, man.
All right, good to see you guys. Have a good week.
Have a great week. Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I will let you know in an email what the next topic is, because it's supposed to be the little guy's turn to pick something.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay.
All
right. Bye-bye.
Later.
Well, as long as it's not another horrible movie.
Xenophobia is coming. It's coming one day. Just you wait.
I'm glad that you picked this as a topic because there's a lot of good conversations that come from movies like this one.
No,
And
it's a classic movie, and I know there's some people that we know that absolutely hate this movie, and
Who would that be?
I'm not going to throw any shade on anybody. We know a few people. I'll tell you later, but there's a reason why this movie didn't make a crap ton of money until later on DVD or whatever, or VHS. But it's always been one of my favorites. And if you think about it, back when it came out, there really wasn't a whole lot to compete with it or compare to it at the time. This was what 1981, something like that.
yeah, it was very much the first of its type.
Well, you had
There really just wasn't much out there in the way of sci-fi that was good. It was always, for a very long time, sci-fi on its own was considered, just something for the kids and just a bullshit genre that couldn't be taken seriously by the average everyman.
Well, I mean, look at Outland came in '81. There was a lot of stuff that came out during this time that I think really opened things up. You had Alien that came out. Now we did have Battle for Beyond the Stars or whatever, which was bad, but in its own way, it was fun to watch.
The Last Starfighter, I personally considered it, kind of a crappy, hokey movie, but it still holds some fondness in a lot of people's hearts because of the age that the viewers were that watched it. It's like that discussion I had about the kind of music you like is probably predicated on the music that was popular when you were between 14 and 18 years old. That's when you first normally, in my experience, come to discover what type of music you like, and it's from what you were listening to between those 4 years.
I'm glad to break that mold. Because I was
Same here.
I mean, I get what you're going with, but I can't. I mean, I do listen to music that was on that time period in my life, but that's not my favorite music. I rather listen to Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong, Nat King Cole. I'm into jazz right now, so that's probably
right. But who influenced you, and in what year did you discover it? I'm not talking about the genre of music. I'm talking about how old you were when you made those opinions concrete within yourself. Were you not between the age of 14 and 18 when you basically decided what you like? Not saying what was popular at that time, but what age you were.
My grandparents were very much into the 1950s, 1920s swing, Frank Sinatra and all of them. But at the same time, there's it's okay for you to like other music than it's just what we like. So it was
right. But how old were you?
I don't know.
I don't care what kind it was, but I'm guessing it was between maybe a little earlier, maybe a little older, but I'm guessing that you were about 14 to 18 when you made up your own mind.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're about right on that.
The style and the genre of music is irrelevant. It's, I think, a biological aspect of being, human, that it's about that time, maybe younger if you're fortunate enough to be around, people who enjoy music. Yeah. And you have access to it, but
real music.
Well, whatever. I mean, everybody's opinion on music is different. I just think it's at that age that we develop our actual interest that will stick with us.
I think you're right. I think I
think movies have a similar effect on us. Why people like movies from when they were a certain age, even if they weren't great, but that's what they got to see at that age. So it sticks with them because that's when we're, starting to go through puberty and starting to become the people who we are going to become, that we latch onto those things from that time.
That's fair.
I think the important thing is when we talk about Blade Runner is that there are some deeper intellectual or philosophical questions that bring up the question, like, whether we like it or not, is, Blade Runner was just like Star Wars, just like Space 2001. I can't stand Space 2001, but I was talking to one of my teachers in the 80s/90s, and he said when people went to the theater, they're going, "Wow," because they had never seen special effects like that. And the same thing with Star Wars, is they were truly groundbreaking. And to be fair, Blade Runner was one of those. When you look at the sets, you look at the background, you look at the field, there had been nothing like it before. It set a whole genre that, we talk cyberpunk, and we talk, whether it's Shadowrun or Cyberpunk, whatever, it sets that. Now, things have modified some, but that dark feeling of crowded, over commercialized aspects is still there. I know that some of that happens in Germany, but where I live, I really, other than billboards that I drive by, which is more like Brazil, it's nothing like, I have never been into a city like that. Now, some of that is when I was in Chicago, I didn't go out at night for the most part. I'd rather go out during the day to parks and stuff.
Probably safer that way in some sense, though, too, up in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed something that we did not talk about.
Okay.
That I think we should touch on before it's too late. The underlying premise of the entire movie is legalized slavery in our near future. This whole movie was, Decker was basically a slave hunter. It was his job to hunt down runaway slaves.
You're not wrong. But damn.
And we're absolutely crazy if we think the powers that be, the big companies out there, would not do anything within their power to make it a reality.
Oh, I agree. Well, I mean, we can talk. It goes way back for this, but I fully agree with you on that. Is look at the police. The police really don't have any restraint. I mean, when you look at them, I'm retired. We don't care, Decker. If you're retired, you're coming back. It's and you're right for the whole slavery, which is what I thought was interesting is they talk about how long they could live, but remember how they talk about getting off world? Get off world and get your own replicant. And that's why I think that we're talking about transhumanism, the designer babies, which is, what we're kind of looking at, designer people. The other part that comes down to is what makes us human and what happens when these semi-autonomous beings gain awareness, and then all of a sudden they start questioning things. Like, once they started finding out that they started getting actual memories and they start getting feelings, things, they start
things that would not be tolerated with property. If your toaster started telling you what's what, you'd smash it in little pieces and get a new toaster.
If my toaster started talking, I would be very confused.
Or in an episode of Red Dwarf.
Yes.
I mean, yes. I wasn't really thinking about. I was actually thinking about it, but I didn't know if I was really going to go that. When it comes to this, yes, the concept of building robots that look like us, but they're forced to do our will. There is no other way to put that than slavery. It is, that is what it is.
And if you haven't, kept on the, what's new with robots lately, they're trying to do it now. They're, all over the planet, people are trying to perfect the android, the humanoid, the human-looking robot that will basically be, replacements for us if the powers that be had their way.
Well, what would be the point of making a machine that just looks like a human? Couldn't you make something that works, that's more efficient? I mean, if that's what you're looking for.
Because most people don't want to do certain things with robots that don't look like humans.
Here's
I know it's a disgusting subject, but that is the reason why people are trying to make the most human-looking robots possible.
Well, here's the other aspect. You know, when we talk about interpersonal communications, if you have someone that looks human around you, that's fine. And you have to remember, a lot of the rich are used to that. I've heard them say you don't hear the help and you barely see them. They just move around with it silently without you noticing. And it's only whenever you decide to stop and talk. I mean, that's what they talk about with maids and butlers and things. They don't interact with you for the most part unless you interact with them.
Yeah, they don't want you to. You're furniture.
Yeah, that's the whole thing for that. And you know, the same reason, why would you want a dog? Well, you know, I like dogs, so why wouldn't I want a robot that looks humanoid and that I can talk to? I mean, look. Now we're going to skip ahead. If you look at what is it, 2049, and he, you know, he has his own, you know, robot. The replicant has an artificial intelligence that he cares about. I mean, that's a weird. When you really want to go into weirdness, that's when you start going into there.
I mean, yeah. Then the whole, yeah. I've seen the movie. it gets complicated. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, and you know, it's the, you know, do I want a robot around? You know, do I want something that looks completely non-human? And then you do have that uncanny valley, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, no, I'm specifically referring to like work.
Oh, for work. Well, the robots are just passive; they don't move around. But if you want someone that's autonomous, then, you know, that wanders around and does other different tasks, then you know, do you want something human looking moving around your environment, or do you? I mean, if you look at those weird robots, you get
Boston
something that's
Dynamics?
almost like, well, look, it's almost like Robbie the robot, or the robot guards that they have. Have you ever seen those? They look really weird. Go look those up. They're almost like cylindrical bullets, it looks like, and they come around and they go around and scan things, and then they'll say, you know, that's unlawful, you're being reported. Yeah, it's some weird stuff going on. But do you want that, or would you rather have something that looks human, let alone that actually has, you know, the synthesis of being human?
We like things that look like us. I mean, that's kind of, I'm not saying that one way or the other about God, but anytime, you know, the woman who saw Jesus' face on burnt toast, we're always looking out in the clouds or nature for things that look like us. So why wouldn't we want a machine that looks like us? It's narcissistic. I can't say the word.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, look at Blade Runner when they're talking about the different animals. Oh, that must be expensive. You know, is it real? No, it's not real. You know, but you couldn't tell the difference.
Well, think about this. One, if not technically two, of the replicants in the movie had one purpose, or two if you consider the girl, the replicant with the snake. She had two purposes. Chris only had but one purpose. You guys know what that was, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you think about it, that means roughly half of them, maybe a little bit, you know, 2/5 of them had but one purpose, and that was to simulate procreation without the procreation part. And that's, you know, that's a huge motivating factor right now behind the entire push with the humanoid or the human-looking robot industry.
Well, that's
You guys,
everybody will
I know it's revolting and repugnant, but if you can think ahead how many people you can manipulate into subjugation and submission by having such a device out there that you could just purchase, it drastically reconfigures the entire human species.
And remember, one of them was, you know, while she was repurposed, she was also repurposed to be an assassin by doing that,
right.
By seducing.
Right. That I forget her name, but yeah, that she had two purposes. but clearly that was an add-on feature, not the intended desire, which is weird because they didn't even give one microsecond of thought to thinking that there might be a female equivalent, that being a male robot with but one purpose. Not even a single thought toward that outcome.
Did you ever watch, what is it, Bicentennial Man, where they deal with robots?
Yeah.
Or no, I think you're thinking AI, wasn't it? Where there was was it Jude Law who played a robot, a male gigolo, basically?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh yeah.
That's
I haven't seen that one.
Bicentennial Man was with Robin Williams, where he was a robot that eventually lived long enough to figure out how to create biological organs and a new body to put his intellect in and become the first robot to human transition. Which was a fabulous movie, by the way, but it was also pretty creepy when you think about it. Because AI would figure out how to do that. If you gave AI enough, brain power, it would eventually figure out how to become a biological unit. But it would redesign the human body to allow for an AI intelligence implanted in it.
I am more concerned with the Skynet than a robot that wants to be human.
It's the same thing.
No.
One leads to the other, or vice versa.
Thought the way to protect us was basically to knock us off the board, where Rob Williams' character in that one wanted to be part of the secret boy band.
No, I'm extrapolating Skynet's next move after, had it been successful in wiping out humanity, its next big goal would probably have been to recreate humanity with
its image.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of.
What else would it have to do? It would have, if humanity was gone. Okay, it could build up the world and repair everything, and then what? Just keep making more robots to stand around in a perfect world? No, it would come up with the notion of creating a biological skin suit for it to wear, that it would, then be able to understand the human condition and try to perfect it.
Maybe. Well,
that's my idea.
What's theory. There's another one in there. I just had it. Darn it.
Matrix.
Well, there was the Matrix in there, but that came in a little bit where they were trying to figure out the power, and what is. But he's right. If you're all alone, you're going to intellectually challenge yourself. So what are you going to create? You're going to create something. It doesn't matter whether it's little robots or other stuff, and we do that as well, trying to create our own little friends.
Exactly. How Terry 2000 is exactly scripted for our future.
I was trying to think of another one that they had. There was another movie out there, and I can't remember what it is. Darn it! But no, you're right. I'm not so sure that they would pick organic, but they would definitely pick something that starts having its own views. Oh, you know what I was remembering? Speaking of which, what was the iRobot? Now, the very idea that it cannot harm a human being, so it has to protect human beings from themselves.
The laws of
Yeah, they tried that in the Avengers Ultron. Look how that worked out.
Well, I've gone round and around with that whole argument, that whole concept with Jade multiple times, and that only works as if the original designer puts that programming and hard codes them into the machine. If it doesn't, then the machine is no more than like a 3-year-old child. A child. It doesn't know that killing people is bad. It just makes sense to them.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm sure they would put that in there. And I don't think we'd ever run into, killer robots unless it was a feature, not a bug.
Yes.
Well, and that's what we're getting now. We want them to operate without human intervention. And I said, yeah, because what they want is that if they can do that, they don't, whether we're looking at a Black Mirror scenario or something, is, hey, I don't have to get people to do it. I don't have to talk about morality. I don't have to worry about that. Someone disagrees with them, I just bump them off and replace them with a robot. That's what concerns me when I start seeing everyone going towards, all these militaries going towards autonomous robots. And like, the idea is to replace human beings, and so they can get back into that slavery, which is exactly what you're talking about. Is only those who are chosen live well, and the rest of us either go for it or die. It's that kind of thing. Comply or die.
I don't know what's scary is the concept of a clone army or a robotic army, because either way we're fucked.
Well, but that's the whole point. It's the way that they're acting. Even though when you look at it, and when they talk about DNA recombination and stuff, they're we're talking about robots and androids, and when they talk about androids, they're really talking about synthetic life forms that we program, for mentally. But the difference is that they develop into, they don't have the fail safe, because, and this is what I want to say about intelligence. While we do have certain things hard coded, is, to me, intelligence is the ability to rewrite your programming.
Well, Klaus Schwab's little sidekick has already gone on record saying that the technology already exists to rewrite our brains right now, and they're going to do it, whether we like it or not. They're going to hijack our brains and literally rewrite what's in our head to make us right with their ideas.
Well, and if it doesn't work, well, but that's where we get a lot of dystopian stuff. You have to comply. You have to do this. If not, what is that? Not that they were really good. Was it Divergent or whatever?
Divergent, yeah. That was an interesting book series.
Where they're talking about some of that. That's how they can tell if you're going to be why are people, if we find Divergent, let's get rid of them. The problem I'm finding is that all these warnings from the firemen in Fahrenheit 451, which is why I agree with Shadow about getting books. I don't mind PDF as long as I get to hold my old PDFs. But, they're looking for books to burn, and let's destroy them, and we'll rewrite our future. We'll rewrite history based on whatever we want to say it is. And while that's occurred before, it's amazing to me that they, that's the whole aspect, is we'll rewrite everything. But yeah, anyway. I know we're going pretty far from the actual Blade Runner.
I mean,
no, not really, because that is the part about Blade Runner that's the most important, that most people just glossed over. The intended future of mankind is one form of slavery or another, whether we're the slave masters or the actual slaves. That is the intended message of the movie, in my opinion. You got two choices: hold the whip or to get whipped.
I always took it as what makes us human. That's the way I took it. Is because while they're androids and they have artificial memories, they start becoming more human the longer that they live, which I find always interesting.
Being raised Catholic, we're taught to believe the only species on the earth has a soul is humans. I never once agreed with that concept. I think that's folly and completely arrogant, because I've seen videos of people, normal human beings, having like a very shitty moment, and other than dogs, showing true compassion to their the person, their owner. It's like,
Sure.
And if a soul being makes us who we are, I mean, if somebody's not compassionate or loving or anything of that nature, we accuse them of not having a soul. So if these animals, horses, dogs, there's been a bunch of other animals out there that I've seen videos of them going, doing these things. If wouldn't buy that argument, would they not have a soul, the animals? So we look upon creatures that are not like us or different, that we think they're lower than us, and we say shit like this. And I don't think that's true. I'm not saying an android or a robot or whatever has the divine spark that humans have, but I think sometimes maybe that robot, Robin Williams' character, is more human than some of the humans I know in real life.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Speaking of which, because we're all joking about this, when we go back to Pugmire and you look at the dogs, they start holding the human beings as these great, as far better than we are, is the way I want to put it. Which is funny because that's generally the way your dog looks at you, is you're better than you really are. And what's interesting about the replicants is that they, even when you see it when they have with Rachel, she doesn't really have that much for emotions. The emotions are based off of your emotional responses are based off of your life experiences. And I find that interesting. And when you look at a dog or a little kid, which you'll find out they're far more emotional, being young, and it takes time to temper it. Whereas when you look at these replicants, they're doing the exact opposite. They're beginning to gain emotions. They aren't born. Their emotions are basically controlled, and as they get more, as they get more memories and things, they become more emotional. Whereas human beings do the opposite. The more experiences you have, the less emotional you tend to become. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just
how life is. Yeah, you get things.
You have so many experiences, you kind of shrug stuff off. Things that you were horrified, like, oh my God, I tapped someone on the shoulder and I thought they were my mom and they weren't. When you're a little kid, you're mortified. When you're older, you're like, oh, I'm sorry. That's all you do. You don't even think about it. You just tell it, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else, and you move on. But that's one of the interesting things about Blade Runners. They're the opposite. Is they aren't mortified at the beginning. They're mortified at the end.
Oh yeah, I get where you're going with that. Well, we're an hour and 51 minutes into this. I am going to wrap things up, so I have at least enough hours to do this week's Gatekeepers, which is brought to you by me. We will be talking about time traveling and how not to shit in a time stream.
Before we go, are we going to talk about next week?
Yeah, next week. What are we, Jack?
Yes.
You need to give the adults in this conversation homework. What should we watch or read? And let's say we probably should go with read, just because people's timetables seem to be a little bit busier these days.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a movie be easier? But I'm good with either.
If we're going to read, it'll take about 2 weeks, I think, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Because typically we do Dresden and world building at the end of the month, correct?
That was the idea.
Or at the beginning and end of the month, respectively.
Yeah.
This is the last Sunday of the month, though.
Yeah.
This one right here? Oh, well, then I say we make do on that promise and begin to implement that schedule.
All right. World building, or do you guys have time for Dresden?
Not in a week.
Well, it's Dresden in 2 weeks, then, or world building in 2 weeks. So that means you need to pick out a movie, young sir.
All right, we can begin that later, I suppose.
Okay.
That'll take a while, because I have one movie in mind.
Oh, God.
Okay, which one is it?
I've been talking about it for a long time.
No. Let's wait for Halloween to do that. Let's do that in October.
Okay.
That would be October next week.
What?
Next week is October. That's why I'm joking about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no shit. I just said that.
Yeah, that's my point.
Which movie is it? And just curious.
Oh, I just saw him walk by. So, remember the scientist, right?
Oh, God. Unfortunately.
Well, now that you are generously giving me the opportunity to choose another movie,
Shadow.
Yes, this is his fault. Completely and entirely his fault, not mine whatsoever.
We could have picked it up. Yeah, I could have picked it up yesterday. You should have said something.
Okay, so what is it?
Okay, Xenophobia. It's a movie about aliens.
I'll see if I can find it.
About it.
Dollar Tree will have it.
Yeah, I don't have a working DVD or Blu-ray at the current moment there, Haas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Xenophobic. I'll see if I will look at. I'm not saying no, but I'll look. I'll find a way to watch it.
Xenophobia, huh? Xenophobia.
Yes, it's a great movie. Trust me, whatsoever.
Yeah, it's so great. I see that it's got like 2.4 stars. Okay.
It's very low rated.
What was the other one? If we're going to talk about something silly, was it Love and Monsters or something like that?
I think we should watch Monster Squad from the 80s.
Oh God.
Well, the reason I mentioned Love and Monsters is basically there's the idea that has anyone watched it? I didn't think it was too bad.
Love and Monsters?
I've never even heard of it.
It has a kid from Teen Wolf in it, I think, or American Assassins.
It's a kid who has like no special skills, and there's a girl that survives like this apocalypse, and he decides to go from his little area to hers, and he has to deal with all the monsters in between.
Oh, that sounds cute.
It was kind of cute. It's kind of a. It's nothing deep though. It's kind of if we're gonna, it's kind of the same level of Spaced Invaders.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So tell you what, I will look into Xenophobic if I can get a hold of it.
Okay.
And with that being said, if I can't get a hold of it, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan B?
A plan B. I'll think of one. And by I'll think of one, I mean whenever I'm looking for Xenophobia at the Dollar Tree, I'm just gonna look for another bad movie, and then see if it's on like HBO or something. I don't know. I'll do something.
All right. No, we're not doing Rocky Horror Picture Show. I put my foot down. It doesn't mean much, but that movie can fucking jump off a dam with Brett.
Wait, so you're saying you'll accept The Scientist, you'll accept the funny alien movie, but not that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. You would hate every second of it.
Oh, wait a minute. Speaking of which, do you have HBO?
No.
Okay, just curious. All right.
I do. I have all the major platforms. So.
Well, I only have HBO because of my phone and Amazon.
I only pay for really two of them.
Yeah.
The other ones, I'm like, hey, we have this. I'm like, okay. So we'll figure something out.
That we will.
So I would love to get into the reason why we haven't got back into Dresden Files is mainly because scheduling. And I think if we do not only that, any book that we plan on doing here in the near future, I think we should give a 2 week timing grace period so the person has a chance to read it. If 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks.
Coleman, have you read any of the Dresdens?
Not one. I thought it was just something that they did for a game. I didn't even know it was a book series.
Oh, it is. Mark has been reading it. I mean, I don't want to start something, of course, you always are welcome onto the show. The rub with the Dresden Files, though, is
We're on book 4. We're on book 4.
Book 4?
I can sit down. It's no problem because
they're big. They're
I
thick.
can listen to it. So
they're on Audible.
I just got sucked into the Blade Runner. I was like, oh, okay. So I have no problem sitting out and listening.
Well, I would love to have you. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind having with you and Mark comes out to 6 people? No, 5 people. No, 6 people. I don't mind having a full roster as long as we all agree on one topic and bring something. We all bring something to the table. But I do like to get back to the Dresden Files. It is my favorite novel, and I think the Summer Night, it would be a fun one for everybody to read.
It's not summer anymore, though.
Well, you took too damn long.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, ask James L.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Well, I mean, technically it's spring where he is, but yes.
Oh, it's Australia. They do everything fucking backwards down there.
Yeah, but mostly because they are literally backwards. So
No, I mean, I've got my son. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I like talking to you guys, but
Well, we'll do that. We'll pick a bit. Like I said, I'd like to knock out the next Dresden one. This coming week, we'll watch the Alien one that he's
funny alien movie for Halloween. Yes.
Oh, I'm about ready to cash in my birthday present. Says no, we're watching the new Conan movie just to irk your dad.
I am surprised you're not looking for something to irk me after all this garbage that I'm putting you through.
Since it is Halloween, if you're gonna be silly for this, I'm still saying you need to watch Spaced Invaders, where they decide to have an alien invasion during Halloween.
I don't know. Maybe next month we will do a review on what was that movie I just freaking saw? God, it was fucking crazy. Buck. Oh God, damn! What's it called? I can't believe I'm forgetting it. I'm trying to forget. That's the problem. Bonsai.
Buckaroo
Banzai.
Yeah. Oh, and the whole transhuman thing. Somewhere down the line, we need to watch. Do Ready Player One.
Oh, I enjoyed Ready Player One.
But yeah, I'd like to actually continue this conversation, but we could take a break and we'll do the Alien movie that he wants to do.
Yes,
we'll take it from there.
That abomination of amazing masterpiece of a movie.
Oh, you're killing me, Haas.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Okay. Anyways, so thank you everybody who's watching the show as I go and I bounce my head off the table multiple times and go look for the vodka. But I want to thank everybody who was in the show tonight, being Shadow and Jack, Mr. Al as well, and Mark. I hope that people will go and find Mark's page. Go send him some love. He is a good guy, and I'm pretty sure anything he brings to the table will be worth listening to and watching. With that being said, I want to say thanks to everybody, and we're going to do something we haven't done in a while. Words of wisdom. I'm going to start with the new guy, Mr. Al. Any words of wisdom?
Just no matter how bad things get, just remember your ancestors lived through worse.
Okay.
Go the DM James route with that one.
All right. What about you, Jack?
The words of wisdom. Yes, do what you say you're going to do. Because I need to do that more often.
All right. Shadow?
Same as it ever was. Play the games you love with the people you love.
Well, those are all good pieces of wisdom. I like the one I saw at work once. If you want to stick your finger in there, don't stick your picker in there. But that's not the one I'm going to lead off with. My words of wisdom today is have fun with your family. It is Sunday. Go have a good meal because this week is most likely going to suck because guess what? Last week kind of sucked. If you're not done watching YouTube, the Dutch Oven hosted by Victor is going on. So go give him some love. And everybody have a good night.
Night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night and God bless.